Harrison Winter watched the child's face like a man following a tense football match. "Go on, kid," he willed at the 5-year-old, ignoring the minor glimmer of guilt hovering at the edge of his consciousness as he framed the thought. "Scream. Run away." In the garden, separated from Harrison by the kitchen window, the little boy's confused and apprehensive expression began to give way to a tentative smile. Harrison sighed, switching his gaze to look over at Tommy, his own 4-year-old, also sitting cross-legged in the garden, wearing his little paper party hat. Tommy was beaming jubilantly, practically bouncing up and down with excitement, as the hideous creature in brilliant gold and garish red capered around in front of him. A clown. A goddamned, honest-to-goodness clown. In his garden. Invited there at his own wife's request to entertain his son and the random collection of similarly aged kids from the preschool. Kids who were now sitting outside, enraptured by the bizarre spectacle of a grown man behaving like an insane, drunken child. It was all Harrison could do to not shudder and look away, torn as he was between revulsion at the clown and the protective instinct that arose in him towards the kids. It was a strange, primal hatred he had for clowns, and not something easily explained. He tried on many occasions to discuss it with Sonia, his wife, but she'd almost always given him that "I'm indulging you, but storing this up for future reference" look. Many times Harrison had imagined himself on trial for the accidental murder of a brightly coloured lunatic who'd made the mistake of jumping out at him, and seeing Sonia take the stand to repeat all the crazy explanations he'd given to her over the years. He felt strongly that the only people who'd acquit him were similarly clown-hating members of the public, and some research had demonstrated that made up only 4% of the population, or at least only 4% admitted it. It even had a name: colorophobia, fear of clowns. To Harrison, it was all simply common sense, or almost all. Any grown man who considered it both a viable and rewarding path through life to dance and caper around children dressed in playful colours and outlandish outfits, conveying expressions they don't mean and emotions they didn't feel, surely had a screw loose. But that was just irrational analysis. Far more debilitating, far more primal, was the soul-chilling horror he felt at the mere sight of one. It was a fear both of deeper and most common human instinct. The fear of the unknown. And not the distant unknown, like the fear of death or disease or even terrorism. No, the fear of an unknown that takes care to hide itself, that purposefully outfits itself in distracting, dizzying colour, and hops and twirls towards the beholder, its every effort bent on winning the confidence of those whom it approaches for some dread purpose known only to itself. That was the stuff of nightmares. A being whose intentions are concealed beneath an impenetrable disguise, but which tries its utmost to be appealing. A being given license to glide through society beneath a mask of congeniality, its true nature shrouded beneath garish costumes, free to approach the innocent at will, and dazzle them to some unknown end. Harrison took a sip of his tea. It was cold, the liquid having long since stopped steaming as he had stood, watching the clown entertaining his child and those of 7 other trusting sets of parents through the window. He chuckled to himself, shaking his head at his attempts to put a reasonable spin on what was, in the end, an emotional, baseless dislike. He supposed he didn't really have coulrophobia. He wasn't afraid of them necessarily. He just hated them on a deep, primal level. Seeing one was like a large spider suddenly landing on his shoulder. Like any right-thinking person, he'd jump and possibly scream. Didn't mean he was afraid of spiders, only that he found their presence spine-chillingly unpleasant, especially when unexpected. He turned and placed the cup down, thinking idly of Miss Muffet, she of the Curds and Whey fame. She probably detested clowns too. Perhaps she was sitting on a tuffet, having left a birthday party like the one outside his window, where no doubt some gibbering fool was prancing around dressed in motley or whatever old-timey clowns wore. And then, to cap it all, the damned spider ruined her afternoon. Though, of course, she could have squashed a spider without doing life in prison. Not so the clown in the garden. More was the pity. "Hi, honey," Sonia called from within the house just before the door slammed. He hadn't even heard it open, so lost had he been in his own musings. She came bustling into the kitchen from the hall, setting down a heavy-sounding plastic bag and rustling around in it with a sigh. Grateful to have something to look at besides the grotesquely capering clown, Harrison reached for a can of tomatoes. "How's the party?" Sonia asked with a wary smile, as she balanced a can on 3 others already sitting in the overhead cupboard. "Did we need more tomatoes?" Harrison asked, eyeing the growing stash. She ignored him, handing him a packet of spaghetti, which he wedged behind some potatoes. "It's okay," he said in response to her question. "Really hate that clown, though." She gave him a glowing smile and rubbed his back before returning to piling up groceries they didn't need on top of those they hadn't used. "I think you've done very well," she said with a mock seriousness, her head inside the lower cabinets. The clang of pans being moved punctuated her muffled curses as she searched for somewhere to hide the 3-pack of tuna she had bought. Harrison turned to glare at the clown. It was now making shapes out of balloons, its bright blue hair flapping in the light breeze. It happened to glance at the house, and Harrison hastily looked away, as though the thing could see right into him with its red-painted eyes. "Considering that you're so terrified of them, I'm impressed," Sonia said, finally extricating herself from the cupboard. She gave him a grin as she began to load up the freezer. "I'm not terrified of them. I hate them." "You are. You scream whenever you see them on the TV. Hey, that was an insurance advert. It had nothing to do with clowns. I just wasn't expecting it." She giggled to herself, shoving a pack of frozen sausages between 2 bags of chopped onions. "Frozen onions," Harrison said flatly. "We do have knives, you know." "Ooh, don't let the clown know that," she said, not glancing up. "I hear they're deadly with a blade." "Shut up," he muttered, looking outside again. The clown had a bright white face, red smudges around the eyes, and was now smiling, a garish, horribly exaggerated blue smile. It looked like a child's painting of a happy face come nightmarishly to life. The billowing golden outfit rippled in the breeze as it twisted the balloons, wrapping them around its gloved hands with an unseemly, frantic jubilance. All around it, the children stared up in wide-eyed hope of receiving a balloon. So innocent, so trusting. The clown glanced up, and Harrison could have sworn it grinned at him. He looked away. "Why do you hate them so much anyway?" Sonia asked, shaking him from his increasingly creeped-out staring. He looked round. She was sitting by the freezer, having apparently decided that it was jammed too full for the fish fingers she was holding. Harrison sighed and looked into his teacup. at the ice-cold liquid sloshing around inside. I don't know. I do remember the first time I saw a clown, though, and I hated it pretty much on sight. I was about 5, 6 maybe. I was in the department store near where we lived with my mum and my brother. He would have been, I guess, 2 or 3, and I was meant to be taking care of him for mum. Thinking about it now, this is probably all her fault. He laughed, lost in the memory. Outside, the children laughed. So did the clown. It was a deep, raucous laugh. The sort of laugh you expect from a shaven-headed man in a pub. Not a bouncing children's entertainer. Harrison shuddered. Ugh. Anyway, he wandered off, so I had to go find him. And I was scared, of course, because I was 6. I saw him on the escalator, which I remember thinking was huge. A massive, moving set of stairs going up into the sky. I was definitely scared of that. I remember looking up, watching him disappear, and thinking he was gone. So how come you don't have a fear of escalators, then? Sonia chuckled. He gasped in mock outrage. Are you making light of my debilitating personal tragedies? Oh, no. Heaven forbid. Please, continue. Right, he said in his best indignant tone. Well, somebody in a black dress with white spots appeared out of nowhere and picked me up. She carried me up the escalator, and, by the way, this is why I hate your mother's spotty dress. Sure it is. And, well, there he was. A clown? No, my brother. Watching a clown. Oh, how shocking. It was! Sonia stood up, grabbing a bottle of white wine from the fridge, and making her way over to where he stood. She reached behind him and opened the overhead cupboard. He just managed to avoid being smacked over the back of the head by squirming out of the way. So this is your traumatic story? That you found your brother watching a clown once? She took out 2 glasses and started to pour the wine, glancing out at the clown, who was now dancing in a frankly disturbing way, as though his limbs were nerveless appendages, flapping about his body. She frowned. Yeah, no, I admit it, they are a bit creepy, she said, taking a swig of the wine. Thank you. Harrison picked up his own glass and gulped a large swig, looking pointedly away from the window. Look, it wasn't that he was watching a clown, he added, somewhat defensively. It was that he'd wandered off to go watch one, up an escalator that even I found scary at the age of 6. You said 5. Whatever. She turned to face him, grinning, that mocking grin of hers. So what you're telling me is that you're afraid of clowns because they make you feel like a little scaredy cat big brother that's frightened of escalators. Shut up. Oh, sorry, honey, she said in a syrupy voice, enveloping him in a hug which did not conceal the laughter she was ineffectually suppressing. Still, she said, standing back and raising her glass in a short salute, I am impressed with you for overcoming your fears. Hardly, he returned, taking another swig of wine and daring a glance out of the window. It was strangely silent out there. The clown seemed to be bending low, talking in a whisper, perhaps. The kids were leaning forward intently. I just about managed not to freak out when he appeared, but I'm not sure that counts as brave. She smiled at him, looking outside again. The clown was leading the kids in a dance. Where did you even find him? She asked. Is there a checker trade for clowns? He stared at her, feeling the blood drain from his face. Outside, the dancing children had passed beyond the view of the window, following the clown. What? He said sharply. She looked at him. What? She said back. Don't joke with me, he said flatly. That's not cool. Harrison, what? You didn't hire him? No, I thought you did. Why the hell would I hire a clown? Sonia was already moving, shouting for Tommy at the top of her lungs. The wine glass smashed to the ground behind her running feet. Outside, the screaming started. G'day guys, I hope you enjoyed that story and thank you so much for giving it a listen. Remember, if you want some more scary stories, you can go to the Scary Stories for Late Nights playlist. Dusk Bowl has been a fantastic project to work on, and remember, if you've got any fanfic or fan art or any just questions about the series, feel free to email me at duskbowl.fm@gmail.com. I love every single one of you, and you've made being a microtuber probably one of the best experiences of my life. I want to give special thanks to my patrons, of course, being Lady Nevermore, Skulk Queen, Catherine Gordon, The Curator, and Stephen Stevens. If you see them in the comments, please say g'day. And to all of you, I bid you logs of love and shit shippers.